Chelsea Elizabeth Martinez was born in Columbus, Ohio on March 4, 1989, and diagnosed with bipolar disorder at a young age, which led to her having frequent and dramatic mood swings. At some point, she met and married Oscar Martinez, and together they had 3 children named Enrique, Chase, and Amy. Chelsea was described as a wonderful mother who loved her children dearly. However, while she had experienced manic episodes for most of her life, they were progressively getting worse. It wasn't helped that she didn't like taking her medicine because she said it made her feel like a zombie. At one point, Oscar had enough and confronted her about not taking the medicine, telling her her mood swings were upsetting the children. It wasn't helped that Oscar had recently lost his job and they were now having financial struggles. Needing money, Enrique began working at McDonald's. However, the shifts were very long, leaving Chelsea stressed from being at home with the kids all day. In order to relieve that stress, she began using the internet more frequently and stumbled upon a now-defunct website called the Experience Project. Through this site, she met a 39-year-old man by the name of Jason Nisbet. Nisbet was an active member on the site under the username DARKRYD3R, or Dark Rider. He was married but had dark secrets that he was hiding from everyone, including his wife, Gina. Nisbet would spend most of his days on the internet, playing videos, watching pornography, and secretly talking about his fetish of cannibalism. He had even joined multiple creepy groups online, such as I Love Evil, Dark, Disturbing, Gory Things, I Love the Taste of Blood, and I Have Sick, Twisted, and Dark Fantasies. That's where Chelsea comes in. She hated her life and wanted to die. So when she met Nisbet and he told her about his cannibalism fetish, she saw an opportunity. She then asked if he would put her out of her misery, and he agreed. On July 31st, 2015, when Chelsea and Nisbet left to meet each other in Minnesota, both their spouses assumed they were having an affair since they never told them where they were going or what they were doing. The only thing Chelsea did was leave this message on Facebook. This is my last Facebook status. I'm just not strong enough to continue on in this life, and I've left to take cyanide and relieve the pain and suffering. By the time you read this, I will have already taken it. I'm sorry for any pain I'm causing you all. Just know that I love you, and this is no one's fault. I was traumatized by the institutions, and I know now that I can never truly escape them. My only regret is leaving my kids behind, but they have a support system and more love than I could ever hope to offer them. I'm going to a better place. Don't be sad for me. Goodbye. The rest of the story is from the account of Jason. He said the two met up at a hotel in Minnesota where they discussed the final plans for ending her life. Since they didn't actually have cyanide, she asked him to strangle her to death and slit her neck, and that's exactly what he did. After checking out of the room the very next day, they drove separately to Shager Park, west of Faribault. They arrived sometime between 10 a.m. and noon, and then walked together across Highway 60. They continued walking for about 15 minutes until they reached a wooded area that was familiar to Nisbet. This location was also chosen because it had access to water where he could wash everything off. Once at the location, he grabbed the items out of his backpack, tied her up, strangled her, used the knife on her neck, and dragged her body to a culvert and covered it with dirt. He then walked away as if nothing ever happened. Meanwhile, Chelsea's family had reported her missing, and law enforcement was on the lookout for her 1993 Toyota. 3 days later, an officer found it at Shager Park, where Chelsea had left it. They performed a search of the area, but nothing was found. Investigators were eventually able to track Nisbet down and question him. That's when he confessed and led them to her body. He was then arrested and pleaded guilty to second-degree, no premeditated intentional murder and was sentenced to 42 years in prison. Interestingly, this is not the first time Faribault has made the news. In 2011, a male nurse was convicted for convincing at least 2 people over the internet to take their own lives, but that's a story for another day. Denise Amber Lee was born on August 6, 1986. During her senior year in high school, Denise, a math whiz and self-proclaimed bookworm, began dating a football player by the name of Nathan Lee. On their first Valentine's Day together, he got her a heart-shaped ring, and she wore it every single day for the rest of her life. After graduating in 2004, they married the following year in Punta Gorda, Florida. By 2008, 21-year-old Denise and Nathan were now the parents of 2 sons, and while he worked, she stayed at home with the kids. They had the dream they always hoped for until it was sadly taken away. On January 17, 2008, at 11:09 a.m., Nathan called Denise while on his lunch break and chatted briefly. During the call, they talked about the weather, the stuffiness in the house, and the fact that she had opened some windows on the house to let the cool breeze in. He called her back at 3 p.m. to let her know he was heading home, but this time, she strangely didn't answer. While driving home, he tried 8 more times, but still nothing. When he finally arrived, he noticed the windows on the house were now closed. When he went inside, he found Denise's phone and her keys on a chair. As for their children, they were found safe in the same crib. However, Denise was nowhere to be found. He also noticed that while the windows were closed, they were not latched, which he felt was out of character for Denise. Now, in a panic, he called his father-in-law, Rick Goff, who was the local police sergeant. A massive search was put together involving over 300 officers, multiple helicopters, and several K-9 units. Meanwhile, it was discovered that not only had Denise called 911 from her abductor's phone, but several others had called 911 after seeing her abduction. Another witness was Jane Kowalski, and she had heard Denise's screams from the abductor's car while sitting at a red light at about 6:30 p.m. She called 911, but none of the 4 patrol cars that were within a mile of the abductor were ever dispatched. The car she was following was a dark green 1994 Chevrolet Camaro and was later identified as belonging to Michael Lee King, an unemployed plumber. King had a sledding accident as a child, which caused a divot in his brain. After that, he was never the same and was described as having a low IQ. On the day of the abduction, King bound Denise and drove by his cousin Harold Muxlow's home. When he got out of the truck to borrow a few things, she grabbed his cell phone and dialed 911. When King got back in the truck, she remained on the call but acted like she was talking to him. She can then be heard on the call begging for her life by saying please a total of 17 times. That recorded phone call would later help convict him.
911. Hello? I just want to see my family. Hello? Hello? Please, I just want to see my family again. Hello? Please let me go. Please let me go. I just want to see my family again, okay? Hello? I'm sorry. Please let me go. Hello? I'm sorry. Please let me go. What are you doing? I want you back. Please let me go. Hello? Please let me go, God, please. Oh, yeah, what? Hello? Help me. What's the address? What's the address that you're at? Hello? What is the address that you're at? Hello, ma'am? Where are we going? I gotta go up to the mountain now. I'll go around where? You need to see exactly where 4 streets go. 5 streets over from your house. I couldn't tell everywhere. What's your name, ma'am? Hello? Please. What's your name? Please, my name is Denise. I'm married to a beautiful husband, and I just want to see my kids again. Your name's Denise? I'm sorry. Please, God, please protect me. Are you on I-75? Where are we? Can you tell if you're on I-75? I don't know where your phone is. I'm sorry. Can you just tell me where we are? Are you blindfolded if you don't press the button? I don't have your phone. Please, God. I don't have it. Denise, do you know this guy? I don't know where your phone is. I'm sorry. Denise, do you know this guy? She might have the phone laid down and not hear a thing I'm saying, too. He keeps saying on the phone. I don't know where it is. Maybe if I could see it, I'll be find it. No, sir. Denise? What's the story? How long have you been gone from your house? Your name's Denise Lee? Can you tell at all what street you're on? No. Do you know this guy that's with you? No. Can they turn off the radio or turn it down? I can't hear you. It's too loud. Oh. Are you going to help me? Are you going to let me out?
Once he had the shovel, gas can, and flashlight that he had stopped to get, they proceeded to his home, where he had set up a sexual assault room. After assaulting her, he shot her to death and buried her in a shallow grave. Around 9:15 p.m. that night, about 6 hours after Denise was first reported missing, King was located and arrested. 2 days later, on January 19th, Denise's naked body was discovered in a muddy field about 5 miles from where Jane had called 911. In the end, King pleaded guilty to kidnapping, sexual battery, and first-degree murder and was sentenced to death. As for the mishandling of the 911 calls by the dispatcher, Nathan fought to have the Denise Amber Lee Act signed into law. It was passed unanimously and requires emergency call takers to undergo 232 hours of improved 911 operator training. Marx Barnes was born in Hawaii on January 17, 1977, to parents Charlotte and Mark Barnes. 5 months later, a horrible tragedy occurred. On June 21, 1977, Charlotte took 5-month-old Marx on a walk, but never returned. Unbeknownst to Mark's father, Mark, she had gone to a random stranger's home and given them a fake name and date of birth for the child. After a little while, she was placed in a psychiatric hospital, and Marx was made a ward of the state. He was then placed into an orphanage 30 miles away and adopted 3 years later by Steve and Pat Carter. They changed his name to Steve and returned to New Jersey with him. Over the years, Steve began to question why his birth certificate was created a year after his birth and how he had the desire to know who his biological parents were. He didn't do much to seek out that information until he saw the story of Carlina White, a resident of Atlanta who was abducted from a hospital as a baby in early 2011. From there, it inspired him to visit missing persons websites. One of those sites was missingkids.com, and as he was scrolling through the list of missing people, he came across a baby named Marx with an age progression photo who had been abducted in 1977 and knew right away he was looking at a photo of himself. From there, he realized his original name was Marx Moriarty Barnes. Even though he felt sure the baby was him, he didn't do anything about it until a friend encouraged him to call the police. Once investigators had his information, they were able to use DNA to confirm he was indeed baby Marx. A year later, he was able to speak to his father, Mark, who said for 33 years he never gave up hope on seeing his son again. He said after his son and girlfriend disappeared, he spent a year driving around the island looking for them with no luck. Steve was also able to connect with his half-sister. While Steve now knows the truth, he has yet to find his mother, who, as of October 2024, remains missing. On August 19, 2024, 59-year-old Joseph DeLucia Jr.'s 95-year-old mother, Teresa Martha DeLucia, passed away. Prior to her death, she had a bad fall and stopped going to physical therapy, which led to a decline in her health. Out of her 4 children, Joe, who was her youngest, took her death the hardest, especially since they lived together in the same home for his entire life. He was known for his mental health issues and his volatile nature, which had worsened leading up to his mother's death. Before her death, the house, worth $900,000, needed to be sold. This upset Joe, who had been complaining to neighbors about it. Due to his mental health issues, they were worried that he would take his own life. He was having outbursts in public and making posts about his frustration with the world and his place in it. He also said to them that, and I quote, "If you hear gunshots, don't bother calling 911. It'll be too late." A day before Mother's Day, he changed his Facebook cover photo to an image of a car license plate that read, "Depressed." He was also making it known that he was worried he would be cut out of his mother's will. The family was hoping to get a realtor involved in selling the home as quickly as possible because 2 of the siblings had to return home soon. So on the day of the funeral, on August 30th, 2024, they packed up part of the house. 2 days after the funeral, Teresa's 4 children, including Joe and a granddaughter, gathered at the home to finish packing and sorting through items. They were also discussing their mother's will and had called and scheduled a meeting with a real estate agent. Tina lived locally, while Frank lived in North Carolina and Joanne lived in Tampa, Florida. While at the house that day, everyone was unaware that Joe had stopped taking his psych meds and had no idea of the horrible tragedy that was about to occur. At some point, they all left except Joe to go to a nearby Starbucks. When they returned with their coffees and gathered in the den to wait for the realtor, Joe grabbed a loaded Mossberg 12-gauge shotgun, approached them from behind, and fired 12 shots. After all 4 family members were dead, he grabbed his mother's favorite white-painted metal chair and stumbled outside, crying and screaming incoherently. Once outside, he sat down in the chair and took his own life. A neighbor heard the commotion and called 911. When officers arrived, all 5 individuals were pronounced dead at the scene, including 69-year-old Joanna Kearns, 64-year-old Frank DeLucia, 64-year-old Tina Hammond, her daughter, 30-year-old Victoria Hammond, and 59-year-old Joe. While he had struggled with mental health issues for years, the only arrest on his record was from a DUI in 1983. Ryan Carter Poston was born to parents Lisa Carter and Jay Poston on December 30th, 1982, and grew up in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky. He was described as a loving son, caring grandson, and protective older brother. While in high school, he studied abroad at 2 different schools. He then enrolled at Indiana University, where he graduated in 2005 with a triple major in political science, history, and geography. He then followed in his family's footsteps and earned a law degree from the Salmon P. Chase College of Law at Northern Kentucky University. In 2012, 29-year-old Ryan was employed as an attorney in Cincinnati, Ohio, but lived across the Ohio River in a condo in Highland Heights, Kentucky. He had also been dating a girl named Lauren Worley, but the 2 had broken up. He then made the worst decision of his life and got involved in a relationship with Shayna Hubers. Shayna, who graduated from the University of Kentucky in the spring of 2012, became obsessed with Ryan. It was to the point where she was even trying to track down his ex, Lauren, and would ask people if she was prettier than Lauren was. Shayna thought Ryan was the one, but when he didn't fully reciprocate those feelings, things spiraled out of control. Ryan began sending his friends Facebook messages such as, "Literally probably the craziest effing person I have ever met. She almost scares me." Another message read, "This is getting to be restraining order level crazy. She's shown up at my condo like 3 times and refuses to leave each time." However, Shayna didn't see that she was doing anything wrong and was sending her own friends text messages that read, "He says he is only with me because I make him feel so awful when I cry," and "My love has turned to hate." Her text only worsened from there, with the most creepy being this, and I quote, "When I go to the shooting range with Ryan tonight, I want to turn around and shoot and kill him and play like it's an accident." It seemed that her obsession with Ryan had grown very unhealthy and possibly even dangerous. She was now texting him anywhere from 50 to 100 times a day. However, even when Ryan would try and break things off, she would guilt him into coming back. This went on for a total of 18 months, until October of 2012, when everything came crashing down. On October 11th, Shayna and Ryan spent some time at her mother and stepfather's home. They then returned back to Ryan's condo, where she allegedly spent the night. The following evening, Ryan broke things off once again. Plus, he had a date planned that same night with Miss Ohio, Audrey Bolte. But after Shayna discovered that, Ryan would be a no-show. Later that evening, at around 9 p.m., 911 received a call from Shayna saying this, and I quote, "I killed my boyfriend in self-defense. He beat me and tried to carry me out of the house, and I came back in to get my things, and he was right in front of me, and he reached down and grabbed the gun, and I grabbed it out of his hand and pulled the trigger." She was then asked how long ago the shooting happened, and she responded about 10 to 15 minutes ago. When officers arrived, they found Ryan dead from 6 gunshot wounds. While at the crime scene, Shayna kept talking to an officer, telling him that she shot Ryan a couple more times because she didn't want to watch him die. She was arrested later that night and charged with first-degree murder.
In the middle of him doing something with his arm or saying something crazy, shot him. And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? And he was laying with his face on the table, like twitching. And so I knew he was going to die a very slow and painful death. I knew he was already dead, within the next 20 seconds. So in the next 2 minutes, I knew he was going to be dead. And he was in a lot of pain. He was twitching, he was moaning, but he was ultimately dead. And so I shot him enough times to kill him so that he wouldn't suffer. I probably should have left it there, but I knew he was going to die. Mm-hmm. Or have a very deformed face. And I knew, he would have died. He was already dying. He was dying. But I just walked around the table and shot him where I knew he would die immediately. His obsession with guns killed him. I would have never, I'm so Democrat, I would have never touched a gun in my life until I dated him. How sweet the sound that sings
While behind bars, Shayna did herself no favors by telling her cellmates that Ryan got the nose job he always wanted. She was also recorded saying to her mother over the phone that Ryan's family was rich enough to buy another son and that she felt there were worse crimes than murder. During her trial, she took the stand and claimed that Ryan was abusive towards her and had been pressuring her to perform unwanted sex acts. However, prosecutors were able to prove through hundreds of text messages between them that Ryan was not the abusive one. In the end, the jury didn't buy her self-defense story and found her guilty of murder. She was then sentenced to 40 years behind bars. However, she was granted a retrial after it was discovered that one of the jurors had a previous felony conviction. The second trial ended just the same, with her being found guilty, but this time, she received life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years.